Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the PixelCast. I am the founder of PixelFest, Jeremy Alessi, and this week, of course, is Thanksgiving. And in the background, what you'll see is a shot from Swapfire, a game that my studio Midnight Status delivered for the Nintendo Wii U in 2016. And this is a little bit of a play on that shot. We had a turkey running away from some fire coming from the Einros cannon of the green player. And of course, you see Mr. Pixel Man there himself riding the turkey to try to get away. And, when I shipped Swapfire, and I should say when we shipped Swapfire, one of the things that I was trying to cultivate were those old living room memories, I think going all the way back to, way back in the day to the NES days, but certainly Super Nintendo, N64, where you had 4 players gathering around and doing couch multiplayer. And there were few better times in that space than over the Thanksgiving holiday, where, friends would come back from college and you would, maybe you would be gathered with your family for Thanksgiving, but there was usually room for friends and family to all come together, at least for an hour or two, and play some good old-fashioned video games. And I think we did a good job of sort of cultivating that feel with Swapfire. That's kind of what the game was all about. And I think for me as a developer, that is primarily why I got into making games. I never wanted to make games that would replace your life. I only ever wanted to make games that would give you a reason to gather around with friends and family, challenge yourself a little bit, laugh a little bit, learn some new mechanics that might twist your brain in a new way that your brain hadn't previously been twisted in. And that was always my goal. And I think Swapfire, although it wasn't the perfect game, it more or less captured my intent of why I got into making games in the first place. And so I just wanted to put this shot up. And this, like I said, this was something we used to sort of promote the game on social media back when it was released in 2016, and the game was released just before Thanksgiving of 2016. So I think it was the week before, or it may have been just a couple of days before, to be honest. I'll have to go back and look at the calendar to see for sure. But it was essentially right before Thanksgiving of 2016 the game was released. So this was one of the first sort of promotional, just social media posts that we threw up and said, hey, play Swapfire for Thanksgiving this year, get some friends and family together, and have a good time. Of course, I remember so many memories from childhood all the way, on up, even to, the last couple of years with the Switch. Always getting either the newest, latest, and greatest system or the new, latest, and greatest game, and sort of being the first person on the block to have it, being sort of a little bit of an early adopter of games, and then getting to bring those to my friends and family and say, hey, look at this new game that came out. Let's all gather around and play it. And that was just always such a fun time for me. So, obviously, I think a lot of people, get new games at Christmas time. But if you were one of those really early adopters, you would probably get the new stuff right before Thanksgiving. A lot of it comes out right before Thanksgiving, and you may have been the person at Thanksgiving sort of cajoling your friends and family to gather around the living room TV and play the latest and greatest game. And I certainly was that person. And although I have to say, I also remember plenty of Thanksgiving holidays where my family was driving, state to state to go visit some other friends or other family somewhere. And sitting in the back seat of a car and playing the original Game Boy and whatever was the latest and greatest game on the Game Boy, or even the Game Gear, any of the portable systems. One year, in fact, I think the Nintendo DS came out just before Thanksgiving, and so I got a Nintendo DS system, and I got them. And I bought multiple, I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought multiple DS systems and I gave them to friends, family, everybody, just so we could all gather around and play wireless games together. And they had the little note drawing app, so we would send messages to each other. And of course, it wasn't as much fun for me to do it by myself. So I went out and bought systems for everybody, for people that were just on the fence, because I was such a believer in the DS. And of course, I think that went on to be one of the most successful consoles for Nintendo. I noticed right away that the systems were flying off the shelves, and I just had a great time with that system. So that was another one. But it's just one of dozens of new products that were released around this time of year that was the new gadget or the new gizmo. It made for great conversation. It made for something fun and interactive you could do with your friends and family. And so this is for just for gaming in general. I always felt like this was a really fun time of year. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to let you, get on to, your family and your friends and your holiday. But there were some interesting headlines, so I wanted to pull those up today. And that's probably going to be it for this episode. Obviously have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week, maybe with some more developer lessons, some more in-depth. Maybe it's been a little while since we've done a Let's Get Techie with it. So, but for the news this week, there are a few interesting headlines right off of Gama Sutra, and so I just want to go through those real quick before bidding you a good holiday. So Phil Spencer, he says, VR is isolating, isn't a priority for Project Scarlet. And so Phil Spencer is, I think, in charge of Microsoft's Xbox division and sort of pushing the gaming initiative there. And he's basically saying we're distancing ourselves from VR. In other headlines that I've seen, he's saying our customers aren't asking for VR. And of course, there were some retorts from Sony and Oculus, other places around, saying we're selling millions of VR headsets. And I think one of the quotes that was attributed to Phil Spencer was something to the effect of, we're not seeing millions of headsets sold. And of course, Sony has sold 4 million PlayStation VR units. So I know in some circles there are people waiting on Microsoft to see what they're going to do in the VR world, and in other circles, I see a lot of people jumping off the Microsoft bandwagon and onto the Oculus Quest bandwagon. It really seems that Oculus has sort of hit the note that sort of feels like the iPhone of VR is here with the Oculus Quest. Obviously, that headset can be used completely as a standalone device, or through Oculus Link, you can hook it up and still use it as a PC-based VR headset that is of the highest quality, or nearly so. I think the Rift S has slightly better performance in terms of it does 80 frames per second per eye instead of 72 or something. But another piece of news that I don't have in the headlines today is that Half-Life Alyx was announced by Valve, and that's coming out in March of 2020, and it will be compatible with the Oculus Quest via the Oculus Link software. And so if you're looking at any headset to get, it only makes sense to purchase the inexpensive $400 headset that also doubles as a high-end PC VR headset. So you're essentially not losing anything there. And it really looks from all the headlines that Microsoft is missing the boat on VR, even though they've got a mixed reality portal that's built into Windows 10, which is really nice. And there's a Dell headset and a Samsung headset that have nice resolution, and they don't have additional tracker pieces of hardware, the either lighthouses or the sensors like you have with Oculus. So the sensors are built into the headset itself. So they're very nice in that regard, but they're not wireless as you see with the HoloLens. And the Oculus Quest seems like it could actually slip into HoloLens territory very easily. They're in fact getting rid of the controllers, and you'll just be able to use hand gestures like you can with the HoloLens. So it's going to be interesting to see how those these two worlds sort of collide. But certainly in the headlines, it looks like Microsoft's distancing itself from VR. Analyst, Roblox revenue on mobile alone surpasses $1 billion. I share these type of headlines because I think from a business perspective, it's quite inspiring to see a company like Roblox. This is not Minecraft, but something sort of similar to Minecraft in that it's a user-generated content ecosystem. But their mobile version of Roblox alone, $1 billion in revenue. That's extremely impressive. And I think it gives hope to people who want to build something that is fun, mobile experience, and something with long-term retention. I think I've mentioned the fact that one of the first times I had a successful game, I spoke to an investor, and what they said is retention, retention, retention. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's popular today. If it's not going to be popular in 5 or 10 years, then that's not something that's really investable. But clearly with something like Roblox or something like Minecraft, of course, we see either acquisition or investment, and there are countless other games that follow a model closer to this. But something to consider if you're developing. Video, embracing the co-op model in indie games. This is a headline that is near and dear to my heart, especially with PixelFest. I've had discussions about how we can try to cultivate a good commercial game industry here, even if it's indie in its roots initially, and it's not super big games, but it's people making a living in the area making games. I think that would be something that is very important. And of course, to create a co-op model, I think you need a few ingredients. And I haven't watched this video or read this article in detail, but it just caught my eye because I've been thinking about similar models and how we could do this locally in Hampton Roads. But essentially, if you have a combination of talent, maybe contract work, some space, and some sort of shared business entity that creates sort of, one-off games into the commercial market in an attempt to catch some lightning in a bottle, and you sort of mix these ingredients together, I think that you have something that could be sustainable, and something that is capable at the same time of capturing that lightning in the bottle. So a little bit of risk mitigation with a little bit of capability to, some of the time goes towards trying to capture that lightning in a bottle, because a lot of times it's just the direction of the content. It's not a magnitude thing. As we've spoken about before, you can always get a Flappy Bird or something like Angry Birds. The execution's a little higher. That was a team that had made about 50 games together before. But even fostering something like that, right? You get a team and you get them making content. It doesn't even have to be entertainment-based content, but as long as the team gets used to working with each other and they're using the tools that they're going to use to develop games, and then they get together one weekend, or even on it could be a short burst, 2-3 month project, and who knows what type of magic they're going to come up with from a directional perspective. So I think this is something that I'm going to check out deeper, and I encourage you to do so as well. Toadman Interactive acquires publisher, sold out. I don't know Toadman. I don't know Sold Out. I just thought this was a very funny headline, and so I just wanted to share it because sold out. Beat Saber dev Beat Games acquired by Facebook. So I think it's easy to agree that at least prior to Half-Life Alyx being announced, that Beat Saber was the killer app for VR, and still is the killer app for VR. That's why Facebook has acquired it. And what this looks like, if you dive into it in more detail, is that Beat Games thinks that the social features that Facebook can bring to the table can greatly expand what they do with Beat Saber, greatly expand their footprint. And also that the deep pockets of Facebook will allow them to bring more music into the game, right? And tie into those celebrities and so on and so forth. So Beat Games has done a tremendous job with this game over the past year and a half, obviously. And my only hesitation on this, of course, is that Facebook, at its DNA level, is a data company. This is a company that wants to harvest as much data about its users as possible to sell that data. And as they've gotten into the VR space, I am weary of how that affects what they do, because at a DNA level, they're a data company. So if I put on an Oculus headset and I'm turning left and right and my eyes are being tracked and all of that, how much of that data is being captured and recorded by Facebook to learn about me as an individual? And could that data at some point be dangerous, right? You would have to probably write a science fiction novel to explore, what could be done with that. But the data that's being collected and the systems that are being created in today's world of super high tech, to tell you the truth, the novel wouldn't really be that much of a science fiction. It would be more being, I think, a cautionary tale of exploring where this technology could go in our current possibility space. And so anyway, that's something that causes me hesitation. Like, I'd love to have a copy of Beat Saber and play it in my home. I've played it before, a number of times, think it's a great game, but now that it's being acquired by Facebook, does that change my perception of what this game is going to be doing? Is Facebook really trying to distinguish itself and move away from their old roots and into consumer technologies? You even see the Portal commercials with hey Fozzie, you're on my TV. Those are the commercials that you're seeing now with the Muppets video chatting with each other using Portal. But how many of us feel comfortable having a Facebook camera and microphone just sitting in our house at all times? So something to keep in mind, I think, as we see these types of acquisitions. And we're going to have to monitor the signaling by Mark Zuckerberg. Recently, he is touting privacy. He is, obviously trying to move at least into more consumer type of technologies. And if they can make money doing that and not harvesting user data, then I think they will do that. I think they would like to. But as you see, even with Google, time after time again, they'll take these moonshots and try to create a new product, and they generally kill those products and just move back to their ad and data sales model because that's more profitable. So something to keep an eye on. I'm interested in this. Don't miss the legacy of Street Fighter II in the words of the experts. This is just something that popped up on my radar because I love Street Fighter II, and so I just wanted to share this. The book, of course, Undisputed Street Fighter, there's a story about my friends and I in that book, and we spoke in a previous episode about how Steve Hendershot flew into town for PixelFest in 2018 and gave a great talk. In fact, you can watch that talk on the PixelFest YouTube channel, and Street Fighter 2 news is always cool, so I'm actually looking forward to seeing what these folks said. I haven't read the article in detail yet, but I just clicked the headline. Valve is clearing out the last of its Steam controller inventory. I remember that this controller was touted for its innovative and unique design, but it does look like Valve is sort of moving on from the idea of Steam as a console. I think that in terms of their hardware resources, they're definitely putting more into their VR stuff, and this thing looks like it's on its way out. I'm sort of interested in it just as a collector, maybe picking one up just to have one in my collection, but this was never a peripheral that I considered mandatory for my actual gaming habits. So it's interesting. It'd be interesting to hear other people's perspective on this and what they thought of the Steam controller. And this was, I think, a great article. I don't think there are enough articles about business for game developers. Obviously, over the years, we've seen many, art tutorials, programming tutorials, business tutorials, but not at this level, An inside look at one indie dev publisher relationship with contract details. And when I first got into indie game development, I remember this was one of the things that I was very interested in was the business side. And you would get the advice like, get NDAs in place, or get user contributor agreements. Make sure if you, I'm trying to even think with contracts, make sure you have the ability to audit a publisher, stuff like that. But as of late, I don't think I've seen that much news, and of course the industry keeps on evolving. And so I feel like this is this would be a good article to check out if you're really seriously considering doing this as a business, something that is important. Google will refund anyone who's already bought latest Stadia Pro games. So it looks like Google basically made some of its games for free, and anybody who purchased those games will be getting those for free as well. I put this up there just because there's been a number of Stadia headlines, and this was the only one that was on the front page of Gamasutra today. But it seems that Stadia has launched, and the consensus is that yes, it can stream games at high resolutions, at high frame rates, if you have a ridiculous data connection, right? Something on the order of, I saw two reviews. One reviewer had a 330 meg per second connection. Another one had a terabit data connection. But other people that live in reality are saying that basically you're playing these games at a 320 by 200 resolution. You're not playing these games at 4K. And there was another article that said that a lot of the games aren't developed to run at 4K natively. They're simply upscaled by the Chromecast Ultra, and that the games are really running at a 1080p, maybe a 1440p. Depending on the game. And for the most part, people agree you can play the games. There's not a whole lot of input lag, so that's not a big problem. Some people are complaining about the compression artifacts, obviously, because you're using video compression. So you don't have every pixel is not perfect anymore. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. One other aspect, of course, is people are saying that multiplayer games, there's not a lot of people playing online. You don't have the big player base. So will Google keep Stadia going for a long time, or will it be like so many other Google products where they took a moonshot and they realized that their core business is what's really making the money, and that they cannot afford, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make as much money as possible? Will Stadia be something that they choose to pull back from if it's not commercially successful very quickly? Or do they have a 5 or 10 year strategy for this console where they're committed that long to really, see the tide change on this? I think it's going to be very interesting. And of course, I'm extremely curious about all goings on in the streaming space as I'm working on Stream SDK, and it is nearly ready to put out into a closed beta. So I'm excited about the technology that I've been working on for the last 7 years. But I'm definitely reading every headline I can about streaming. So, and Friday is your last day to submit unique controller games to Alt Control GDC 2020. Nathan, if you've got your shoebox arcade controller at the ready, maybe this is something you should check out. And of course, I think this is a sort of a showcase for, it's self-explanatory, right? Unique controller. So if you come up with some sort of unique controller game, this is this is your jam, so to speak. So that's maybe there's something to maybe you want to do a game jam over your Thanksgiving holiday and submit for this. And let's see, back to Phil Spencer. So that's all for the news today, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. And of course, please continue growing through love of games as always. We'll be back next week, and hopefully with some more good news, some more let's get techie with it, and all of that. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.